I'm giving very serious thought to eating your wife.
The most famous serial killer in movie history is lusting for fresh blood in Hannibal, one of the new movies we'll be reviewing this week, and we'll take a look at the original Hannibal Lecter, plus have a special report on Oscar-related websites from our internet correspondent, Michaela Pereira. I'm Roger Ebert, film critic for the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Richard Roeper, columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times. Anthony Hopkins is back as Dr. Hannibal Lecter in the long-awaited sequel to The Silence of the Lambs, the Academy Award-winning picture that also resulted in Oscars for Hopkins and Jodie Foster. Fresh from Gladiator, director Ridley Scott fills the screen with beautifully haunting and stunning images that give the movie an operatic feel. This time, Julianne Moore slips on Clarice Starling's shoulder holster and finds herself on the doctor's trail. Here she meets with an ex-orderly from the mental asylum where she met Lecter all those years ago.
Did you ever think, after he escaped, he might come after you?
No. He once told me that whenever feasible, he preferred to eat the rude. Free-range rude, he called him.
That's Frankie Faison as Barney. Even though Lecter is so infamous that Hannibal-related items are selling for big bucks on eBay, he's been able to carve out a new identity in Florence as a scholar named Dr. Fell. The great Giancarlo Giannini plays Pazzi, a local detective who thinks he's hunting Lecter when in fact it's the other way around.
It's your ancestor, Commendatore, hanging beneath these very windows.
Starling knows Patsy is skirting the law to nab Lecter for the reward money, and she calls him to let him know she's onto him.
Someday you'll thank me, or you won't. I don't care. You'll be alive. Inspector Patsy?
Is this Clarice? Well, hello, Clarice. I'm afraid I have bad news for you.
Is he dead?
We're deep into the story before that first conversation between Hannibal and Clarice, but even when they finally tango in person, there's a surprising lack of tension or erotic undercurrent. And although Julianne Moore is a fine actress, she's not Jodie Foster, who was so indelible as Clarice. This isn't like a James Bond picture where we can make that leap of faith to another performer. But even if The Silence of the Lambs were erased from my memory, I still wouldn't recommend Hannibal. It's more of a gore fest than a psychological thriller, and the decision to show the cannibalism in graphic detail, I think, is a huge mistake. Instead of being terrifying, Hannibal is just disgusting.
You know, you make a good point. I suppose that if the sight of a man cutting off his own face and feeding it to his dogs who are seen eating it doesn't get the NC-17 for violence, then the MPAA is just never going to give that rating again.
Not to mention the fact that we see a human throbbing brain at some point with a guy's head screwed off.
And it's a little bit of it is sauteed and fed to him for his lunch. You know, I had another problem with Hannibal in addition to the ones you've mentioned. For me, the essential appeal of Hannibal Lecter was that his mind roamed widely while his body was imprisoned. I'll never forget that first shot of him in The Silence of the Lambs. Clarice descends 7 flights of stairs and goes through 7 locked doors before we finally see him for the first time behind that unbreakable plexiglass wall.
That is the Duomo scene from the Belvedere. Do you know, Florence?
All that detail just from memory, sir?
Memory, Agent Starling, is what I have instead of a view.
But now, in Hannibal, here he is in a Washington train station, riding on a merry-go-round, and instead of being the embodiment of caged malevolence, he's been reduced to a more conventional movie predator.
Clarice, you were very, very warm. You were so close.
In the first movie, he had to use his intelligence to try to control his world and to try to escape. Here, he seems to have this mystical ability to escape from anywhere at any time, and we don't even see how he does it. I think that kind of misses the point. Although the movie is made with craft and skill and it has fine performances, it doesn't have the focus and the power of the first one, and I agree with you, thumbs down.
It also doesn't have any of the terror of the first one. The first one was a really scary movie, and part of the reason was because they didn't show us that much violence. They showed us a lot of the aftermath, and it was more of a psychological thriller. This thing, you see it in graphic detail. There's not one moment in this movie, which runs longer than 2 hours, where I was ever scared or surprised. Yeah, you're disgusted. Well, so what? They can do disgusting in any kind of a movie. To have this caliber of a cast and Ridley Scott and all this money and all this anticipation, and then to blow it on, well, we're just going to gross people out, to me is a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, you know, I read the book, and at the time, when it first came out, everybody said, oh, they can't film this. And what amazed me was they could film that, because the stuff in the book that you thought couldn't be filmed is filmed. And I'm sure that audiences, there are going to be big audiences for this movie.
Of course.
I'm sure they're going to laugh at some of the scenes that we've talked about, because that's a way of dispelling your feeling of discomfort. Other people are going to hide their eyes. But whatever they do, it's basically just a geek show. It isn't this kind
That's
of
exactly
elegant,
what it is.
stylish imagination about the mind of this Hannibal Lecter that made Silence of the Lambs so special. One footnote, an actor whose name I will not mention plays a person basically without a face in the movie and does a good job.
Yeah, he's terrific.